Then you should be welcome to the 213th episode of Podcast Juventus Club Svezia, and this time I have me on Andrew Prasana. Welcome.
Thank you, Frederick.
You are from the Juventus Denmark podcast.
Yes, I am, and I can say I'm a huge Juventus fan and have been a Juventus fan since the 90s. And I would actually like to talk about my first experience with Juventus, because I think when you are a Juventus fan, you have some kind of moments in your life that are just remarkable, that you will never ever forget. And the funny thing is that it was in the mid-90s where Juventus were doing very well.
Yeah.
But I must admit, I was kind of fond of another club back then.
Okay.
Don't worry, it's not Inter. Don't worry. Not an Italian club, but it was Manchester United, because the Danish goalkeeper, Peter Schmeichel, he played there. And in Denmark, Premier League clubs, they are the most watched teams.
Yeah.
So it was natural for me to follow them. And I think it was around the mid-90s where Manchester United had a game. You might remember that one. It was at Old Trafford, I think, Manchester United versus Juventus.
Yeah.
And Juventus had this certain player, one of the legends of Juventus today, Alessandro Del Piero. I think he was around his early 20s. And after, I think, 16 seconds, he scored the first goal in the game. And I was completely bedazzled. I was with my brother and I said, what team is this? And who is this player? And this was actually love at first sight. So I forgot everything about Manchester United and I was like, I have to follow this team, see who they are. And then I just saw how they played back in the days with Marcelo Lippi. Oh my God, one of the most feared teams in Europe. So that was my first experience with Juventus, you can say.
It's the same for me. As in Denmark, in Sweden, we just follow Premier League. But we have a show like Unicruz Due in the mid-90s, late 90s that I was watching. And it was Serie A for me, and I follow just Del Piero as you. And I remember when you talk about Manchester United, the Gary Neville interview when he was drawn against Juventus, and he just, shit.
Yeah.
So I can recognize your way into to the club and by the player of Alessandro Del Piero, the true legend of the club. And talk about that. You talk about Marcelo Lippi too. We have another coach now who has big success on the first 5 years in the club. Now he's 3 seasons in his 4th year contract. What do you say about the comeback of Massimiliano Allegri?
Allegri, well, if I have to be honest, I think he's an inspiring coach. He is, and he's done. Yes, the first stint that he had, it was exceptionally good. We all know that. But what we also know is that it was a team that he had inherited from Antonio Conte.
Yeah.
And I think Massimiliano Allegri, he's a really good coach when the team has a foundation and some kind of tactical sense in regards to how to play. So he did everything that Conte couldn't do back then.
Yeah.
Conte, he was a good coach who can mold a team and reignite the passion, the Juventus DNA. But he's not a finisher, you can say. He's not the guy who's going to get the best track record in Europe. And you can see that for Conte as well in all the other teams.
Yeah.
He can win the domestic league, but he would never go far in the Champions League. But Massimiliano Allegri, on the other hand, he's a pragmatic coach, and he is a genius when it comes to tactical substitutions. I don't know if you remember the game against Tottenham at Wembley Stadium. My sister was actually present at that game because she was working at Wembley at that moment. so she had free access to everything. So she watched the game for me. You can say she's not a football fan, but she watched the game. And one of the things that Allegri could do, he could see the game, how it evolved, and we went behind, if you remember, the goal from Sarr. And then it looked like we were going to go out of the Champions League after 2-2 at home. But then he made these two substitutions. I think it was Lichtsteiner, the one, and then it was Khedira or something. I don't remember 100%, but I remember Lichtsteiner. And moments after, we equalize. And then Dybala, he scores this phenomenal goal from Higuain. And that's what Allegri can do. But it's based on a team that already has a foundation. Second stint, if we look into that, the team didn't have a foundation. It came from poor results for one season with Pirlo. And then we had the Sarri season where the dressing room was completely lost. And then Allegri took over. I believe he's a very good man management coach. I think he was the right coach last year when we had this penalty and there was havoc everywhere in the Juventus rooms, you can say. And he was really good at maintaining that. I don't know if any other coach would be possible to still keep the fire going in the players, because the players had the faith. But, and there's a huge but, because if you look at the 3 years that Allegri has had, I mean, we have zero progression. And I mean zero progression, because when you see other coaches, I would say it's fair to say in the first 4 months, you should see something different in the team. You cannot say you need 1 year, 2 years. I remember that Mourinho, he said, well, the first year I need to do all the tactics, the foundation, but the second year I always win. And that was true. He did. He won the leagues. But for me, it seems like the team is regression. It's only getting worse and worse. The tactics, it's too predictable. That's the main problem. And the other main problem is that modern football is different. It's more attacking football. It's more fluent. It's not this Catenaccio style that we had back in the 90s where a 1-0 is good enough. And I think the main issue with Allegri's mindset is that he's focusing on not to concede. And that's okay if you are a mid-table team or you are a relegation team, because if you concede one goal, it's really hard for those teams to score against the bigger clubs. But when you have this attacking talent that you have at Juventus, you have Chiesa, you have Dusan Vlahovic, on paper, they are probably one of the best duos in Europe or perhaps the world. And you can see that when we got Dusan Vlahovic from Fiorentina a couple of years ago, he was the best attacker in Serie A. He had like 16 goals or something, and I think he scored 5 more or something for Juventus. And that's actually something that you have to consider, because he played for Fiorentina. That's not the best side, but they played 4-3-3. They took advantage of the attacking talent that they had, and that's why he was so good. But then he comes to Juventus and has to adapt to, of course, many other things. There's the environment, the pressure. He's still a young lad, but he's not getting the ball that often. He's playing for a team who doesn't want to concede, who plays way much back in their own field than the opponent's field. And one thing that we have discussed a lot at Juventus Denmark is that if you look at the stats for the games, all the other teams that we play against, 9 out of 10, they have the ball more on our field in their own. And that's worrying, because then you only have these counterattacks that you can rely on. Of course, some of them are getting better and better because you have to look at McKennie this season.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that guy. He was so bad before, but now he's like the best possible version of himself with, I don't know, 10 assists so far or something like that. And that's because he's really good on the ball and can play it fast and get these assists. So what's happening now is that we have a good defensive foundation, but the attacking foundation, it's like you rely on individual talent instead of a real setup.
Yeah.
So you don't have this offensive style. So you rely on players like back then on Dybala, who could do something creative and then create goals on his own. Same thing with Cristiano Ronaldo, the best poacher in the world of all time, you can say. Can score goals from any angle, from out of nowhere. We don't have these type of players anymore. So you have to rely on that the opponent do some kind of mistake. And that's why I say it's so predictable, because you could actually sit back and predict, okay, what's Allegri going to do? In the first 15 minutes, maybe he's going to play a little bit aggressively. Then the next 15 minutes, he's going to take a breather. And then he's going to play a little bit aggressively again. But the focus is not conceding. And when we hit the 60th minute, he would do some kind of attacking subs. But the problem is that the game plan won't work if we have conceded, because then we have to score more than one goal.
Yeah.
And that's why when I look back at last season, I think we had 7 or 8 games we won 1-0, 2-1, like that. And people were like, oh, Juventus are coming back. But I had this bad feeling that it was more luck than it was a mastermind tactic. Because we saw what happened in Naples a couple of rounds after. We got humiliated 5-1. But to be honest, it was one of the best Napoli teams that we have ever seen. But the difference is not 5-1 for Juventus. And the problem was that Allegri's mindset, again, he's playing against a super attacking team. Of course they're going to score if we just sit back and wait for counterattacks. So that's why I feel like that at the moment he is not what the club needs to progress.
Yeah, I think you can compare the league game against Lazio and the cup game against Lazio. We didn't have Vlahovic in the first game, and I saw 10 players like 25 meters from Szczesny in our own part of the field, like 80 minutes of the game. And when Chiesa is going to attack, he's like 50 meters from the opponent's goal. When we have Vlahovic, we have a target to put the ball on, but we don't use that anyway. So if we have Dusan, we have a player who can control the ball, and other players can go up on the field. But that's not Allegri's football nowadays. He just, like you said, it's the individual players he rely on, and just didn't care about the offensive plays. You can see we have the squad to play like 4-3-3, and like I wrote yesterday, I think it was Romeo Agresti who is talking about the trio of Vlahovic, Yildiz and Chiesa, and I saw a comparison in on Twitter, I think, in Fiorentina they have Ribéry, Chiesa, Vlahovic, a trio, but Allegri couldn't use that trio like more than just a few minutes in the like 3-4 games before, and I don't understand why he don't try that trio in the front.
Yeah, I would say that it's risk-taking always to play with more attacking players, and one of the reasons I think he doesn't want to do that is that we don't have proper midfielders who are creative enough. I believe that Alcaraz could be one of them.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that a player who hadn't been injured for several seasons magically got injured with some kind of muscle injury at Juventus. And that's one of the things that we have been talking about at Juventus Denmark as well, that some of the training tactics in Italy are very outdated.
Yeah.
As we spoke with one of the experts on our panel about, is that the training is too hard physically. So it tends to give the players muscle strains, and that's why we often don't see our best players play 90 minutes because they're too exhausted. And then you can see the German teams who are making a mockery of Juventus because when De Ligt, he joined Bayern Munich, they said he was not in good shape. So I believe that our training regime, it's outdated as well.
Yeah.
So even though we are one of the most modern clubs, our facility, one of the best.
Yeah.
Our next-gen academy, one of the best. I would say if we keep this progress, we're going to be like La Masia or Real Madrid's academy at some point, because this is going very well. We are really developing some interesting players. There was the idea from Agnelli back then that in a couple of years, almost half of the squad should remain of young players that we have developed by ourselves, because we don't have the financial strong house like the Premier League teams.
Yeah.
So we need to overhaul the squad with players who can adapt to modern football. We did it with the fullbacks, you can say.
Yeah.
We have Cambiaso, can be used, and Timothy Weah as well. But we need a player who's a number 8, like in Real Madrid.
Yeah.
You can see when they play 4-3-3, they have 2 creatives and 1, you can say, a defensive midfielder. So I think sometimes I say that he's a chicken because when Juventus do have our backs against the wall, we are actually very good. I don't know if you remember some of the games with Allegri. We lost the first one, but then the second one, we just came out like animals.
Yeah.
And there's especially 2 games that I remember. The first one is against Bayern München. It was, I think, in 2016, where it was 2-2 in Torino.
Yeah.
And we knew, okay, we have to go to Allianz Arena and win the game. And we scored 2 quick goals, and I even think that Morata scores a 3rd goal that gets annulled by mistake. So we should have been 3-0 up. But you could see that we had a team who could be 3-0 up against Bayern München, one of the strongest teams in the world. And that's because he changed the mentality. But when there's nothing at risk, he plays this kind of chicken football where we don't want to concede, and we only win the games in the 90th minute because the opponent is too poor and they make some mistakes. So that's some concerns about them.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot of coaches. When I talked to Morten from your podcast, he come with a surprise name for me, Enzo Maresca in Leicester, but every source now is talking about Thiago Motta. Do you think he's the coach who is going to train Juventus?
Well, I think if we wait just a second with Thiago Motta, if we look at the situation right now, I believe he should be sacked. Yeah. Right now. Yeah. Because we need to shock the team. And a couple of days ago, I actually wrote a piece for the Danish forum and then on X as well. Yeah. And I think the right person at the moment is Fabio Grosso. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that post, but the main thing about this is that Fabio Grosso, he's a former Juventino.
Yeah.
He played for Juventus. He's a former world champion. He was even the youth coach for some years. He has coached many Serie A teams, and now he went to Lyon, and he's a free agent at the moment. So this could be the kind of revival that Roma got. They brought Daniel De Rossi back only for 6 months, and you can see they're transformed into a top 4 team. Of course, they played draw against Lecce in the last round, but they still won many games. And I think the only game that they lost was against the best team in the league, who are Inter at the moment. So I would say we should go for him right now, and then relax at summer, and then have some talks with other coaches. My dream, it's still Zidane.
Yeah.
No doubt. Zidane is my dream, because this guy, former Juventino, he actually didn't want to leave Juventus back then. I don't know if you know the story, but his wife was the one who pushed for him to leave, because she wanted to live in Spain and in Madrid and with that lifestyle. And then he was okay, and then he moved. And now he has been sabbatical for a couple of seasons. And I just think that a man who has won Ballon d'Or, world champion, knows the team, won 3 Champions Leagues in a row, could be a player who knows exactly how to use players like Chiesa and Dusan Vlahovic in the best manner. Because I believe when you're a coach, you have to look at the best players you have and say, okay, we built the team around them. So at the moment, we built the team around defense. That's a problem, because that neglects our attackers. Yeah. But instead, if we focused on building the team with Chiesa and Dusan Vlahovic, and I know, of course, we had Pogba in our mind as well, but sadly for him, there are doping issues at the moment. But these two, and then add Yildiz into the equation. For the next season, we bring Soulé back as well. Then you have 3 wingers that you can use. And then you, of course, have Ealing Jr. as well. So I think we have a huge foundation for playing 4-3-3.
Yeah.
And of course, then people, they talk about Thiago Motta. And you can say what he has been doing with Bologna is phenomenal. It's completely amazing. I think we were lucky not to lose to Bologna last time when we drew against them. I think it was at home, because they should have had a penalty that they didn't. And I also believe that the referee for the game, he was suspended after that, because it was a mistake. So we basically should have lost that game, but we didn't. You can just see how they played. And this guy, he built his foundation on his best players. You can see Joshua Zirkzee at the moment, the Bayern München, former Bayern München player. This guy, it's not that he's that good, but he's that good for Bologna, because they focus on players like him and Orsolini, and they play offensive football, modern football. He's a young coach as well. The only thing that I have against this is that he's a former Interista.
Yeah.
But the one thing that could make me accept it is the rumors are that he's actually not that fond of Inter anymore, because when he left the club, there were some huge problems with Moratti back then.
Yeah.
So some people are actually saying that he would love to go to the rivals and beat Inter. And if you have this kind of motivation to beat the best, the rival, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Because at Juventus, mentality is everything. That's what we are known for, the winning DNA. We need to get back to have this winning mindset again. And one that I love to talk about is Del Piero. He had a game, I think it was around the zeros, when Juventus drew against AC Milan.
Yeah.
Back then, AC Milan was a Champions League title challenger. We drew against them, and when he went into the dressing room, he started kicking, and he was mad, and people like, why are you mad? We didn't win.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want players who are mad at not winning, and we go back to our motto, winning is not the most important, it's everything.
Yeah. What do you think when you talk about that? I saw it's just a picture, but you say Josef Nonge talking to Adrien Rabiot after the loss against Lazio, and they were laughing when they get off the pitch. And when you talk about the mentality of the club, we don't have Buffon anymore, we don't have Barzagli, Bonucci, Chiellini, we don't have the senators in the club, and the captain is Danilo, and the vice captain is just Rabiot. When you're talking about the mentality, you get mad when you don't win, and the Juventus DNA as such. You're talking about the players we have in the squad now. Do you think we have any leaders in the club right now?
I'm actually afraid that we don't have the same leaders that we had back then.
Yeah.
And I know that people, they didn't like Bonucci, but Bonucci was still a great leader in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't the best player anymore, he would still sometimes shake the players when he was mad. And back then, when you had Barzagli, Buffon, Chiellini, if you fucked up on the field, they would be waiting for you in the dressing room.
Exactly.
And that's why fear and respect sometimes go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was very shocked when I learned that we got Danilo as the captain, because I don't see him as a great captain. I see him as an okay, mediocre player, but he's not the best. So if he is your captain, then you can see how the team is.
Yeah.
It's mediocre. At the moment, we are mediocre. It's because of great players that we won some games in the 90th minute, and that's why we are overachieving, I think, at the moment. So we lack real leaders. We don't necessarily need the leaders to be on the field, but if we have them back office, that would be great as well. Because we had a player like Pavel Nedved, and you could see the grinta in him every game. It was really great. And I believe if we can persuade Del Piero to come back and take that VP role, that would be one of the best things for the club. He's so respected. He can be this bridge for the players and the management, and he would be waiting in the dressing room and ask players, why are you doing this on the field? So I don't necessarily think that we need them on the field the whole time if we have them in the back office. But I still think we need another player as the leader, as the captain for Juventus. And if it was me, I would have given it to Gäst.
Yeah. And when we're talking about Zidane, I have talked about him in many episodes before. The thing for me, as he had got the Juventus mentality, get Juventus at heart, but when you're talking about Zidane, what he done, he's done that in Real Madrid, the club he played for, the club he was in the Castilla, the B team for, and then he was assistant in the A team, and then he took the part of the coach of the A team, and he had like 22 players in world class. If you come back to Juventus, he doesn't have 11 players of world class. Do you think he can do the same he did in Real Madrid and put Juventus at the top again?
I think it's hard to emulate what he has done, because he had the best player of all time in his squad, Cristiano Ronaldo, who he could rely on, and the whole focus of his tactics were give the ball to Ronaldo in some way, and then he would score, do something creative. But it was the attacking mindset that they had. And I know that we don't have the players that Real Madrid do, but we still have two of the best offensive players in the world. If Vlahovic had scored 30 goals this season, no one would have said, that's a fluke. We would have said, okay, that's what we thought his potential was.
Yeah.
But if he scores under 10, then we would see something wrong. But if it's Moise Kean, we couldn't care less.
No.
Okay, the guy scored 8 goals, fine. If he scored 16 goals, we would be shocked.
Yeah.
Because we didn't think that he had the potential to do it. So we have two of the finest players in the world. We have Yildiz, who is an up-and-coming star. You can see the way he carries the ball. This boy, he's a golden boy, you can say.
Yeah.
And then we have Sule coming back as well. So I would say that we're not that far away from having world-class players who can build on what Zidane has in mind.
Yeah.
So of course we're not going to challenge for Champions League straight away, but I believe we would be a definite challenger for the Serie A if we had an offensive-minded coach.
Yeah, and I think in the squad and the players we have in on ownership, like Soleil, as you mentioned, we have players to play 4-3-3, but the midfield, we must get a quality midfielder, because I have talking about Locatelli as a regista, and I don't think he can manage that role. He's a Mezzala for me, and if you have Rabiot, if he get a contract extension now for like 3 years, he is a Mezzala too. Then you have to put in a regista or play with two midfielders who do box-to-box play. But I don't think Locatelli is the player who has a regista. You can have Fagioli when he come back, but I think we have like we're talking about Jorginho in Arsenal, with experience and playing that position, like under Sarri in Napoli, and then in Chelsea too. I think Sarri was there, so we have like a spider in the net for that play. What do you think about that?
I actually think that we should move on from playing registas.
Yeah.
I think that's outdated as well. It was very good in the 90s, where the pace was slower, where the teams didn't have this attacking mind at the same manner.
Yeah.
But now they are attacking so much that it's really hard to play as a regista. You can see even the relegation teams, they attack.
Yeah, yeah.
Back 10, 20 years ago, they didn't. They had respect for the teams that they met, and they were like, okay, we have not to concede 10 players back the whole time, and then we try for a counter, and if we score, we score. And if we get a draw, we are happy. That was the mindset back then. But now they all want to play offensively. Just look at Sassuolo. Really offensive-minded team, but they lost some of the greatest players that they had, Raspadori, Scamacca, Locatelli, Frattesi.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're not that good anymore. And the problem is that they're playing in the same manner. They don't have the best players anymore, and that's why they're in the relegation zone.
Yeah.
Because they cannot utilize what they had before. So that's a team who should play like Allegri at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can still see that in some games they score 4 goals or something like that. But then in other games they concede 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we should move on from the regista and maybe play with a defensive midfielder instead.
Yeah.
2 number 8s. That's what I think would be best.
Yeah, and I think I talked about this in other episodes. We can play 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 with like Yildiz after Vlahovic and Chiesa and Sule on one sides of him, or 2 sides of him. But do you think like Zidane or Thiago Motta or coaches like that are going to make Juntoli put in players like they do want to play with?
I think we would do that because if you could see the way that Giuntoli he did in Napoli, where he had Spalletti, and the funny thing is that Spalletti he has not been that great coach for a decade.
Yeah.
He has been a mediocre coach, but then he had a guy like Giuntoli who had a vision for football and said, okay, if we get these players, how can we utilize them? It needs to be a dialogue. So I think we have a Giuntoli who wants to move on.
Yeah.
Because you cannot go from one of the best Napoli teams ever and then play for or work for a team who is a mediocre Juventus. If you look in our history, so of course he wants to revolutionize, and he had very little time to do that the last summer. So I've been telling people, even in Denmark, because they're like, oh, you also guys said that Giuntoli would do great things, but people, they need to have patience because success doesn't happen overnight. So I think this summer, that's where we're going to see what Giuntoli has been working on for several months and what he can do. And you can see we're already changing in the back office.
Yeah.
Mana is presumably going. And we know that Cherubini, it was temporary.
Yeah.
So we're going to change the whole back office of Juventus. And of course, the coach will be changed.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Giuntoli is not going to do this. This guy, he's a diehard Juventino. His family is Juventino.
Yeah.
And De Laurentiis, he didn't even know that. So it says everything about this guy. So for him, now he's finally working at the club he wanted to.
Yeah.
Of course, every person, they want to be at the club that they love the most. And when you have this passion to drive you, you know that this guy, he's going to change the club. So yeah, I expect that he's going to change some things this summer.
Yeah. And I think I'll talk about this in former episodes too. We did a restart with the appointment. Andrea Agnelli, who left the club, new president, new CEO, and you're talking about like Del Piero, Chiellini in the staff. We got Giuntoli in. We lost Tognossi to Granada, I think, the chief scout. And now we're going to lose Cherubini, we're going to lose Mana, and Giuntoli is taking former staff from Napoli, from Carpi and such. Then you have to change the coach too, because it's a brand new club again and restart. But do you think that the legends of the club is coming back? We talk about Del Piero like last year. Now it's more Chiellini. But the thing, you're talking about Del Piero as a vice president. Do you think that's the role for him, and Chiellini, who has the economic education behind him, what's role? Because I think like Maldini in Milan didn't work straight away, then start to work proper, and then it didn't work again, and he left. And I don't want that thing for like a person like Del Piero or Chiellini. Do you think that the vice president is the position for Del Piero, and what position do you think Chiellini is good for?
I can say that if we look at the situation in Milan, that they had foreign owners, the owners, they wanted to say a lot of, and I think we are very lucky to have an Italian owner, and it's the EXO group, and they rely on the management. They can change in between, and EXO is huge. It makes billions of dollars every year. So I think they know what they're doing, and that's why we're not selling the club.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're gonna say that much. So we're gonna get in the same trouble as Maldini did, and in other clubs you have seen with the Glazers and in Liverpool with the Americans as well. So I think that if we bring back Chiellini or Del Piero, I don't believe that we're going to bring both of them back at the same time. I think the best role would be a VP role, because it's the bridge between the management and the team.
Yeah.
So I would just be happy if one of them comes back. Of course, mostly Del Piero. I believe that he has hinted it a couple of times that he wouldn't rule out moving back to Italy with his family, and Juventus is always at his heart. And even I think a couple of last season, I think it was, when he was working for the American broadcaster, I don't remember which one it was, ESPN or something like that.
Yeah.
Then they were like, "Oh, Roma, Forza Roma, you have to hold this scarf up." And he was like, "No." I think it was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. This guy, he hasn't played for Juventus for a decade, but he's a symbol of Juventus. Yeah. He's like, "No, I'm not going to touch a rival's scarf, even though I'm not affiliated with the club anymore." Yeah. So I think this guy, he is just Juventus. When you think of Juventus, you think of Del Piero. When you think of Del Piero, you think of Juventus.
Yeah.
It's a marriage that's going to last forever, you can say. That's why he needs to have a prominent role at the club. Not a president role, because I think that's too much management, but a role where you also are near the players. Maybe in the future he can be president, like Boniperti. He was also a loved player at Juventus, as you know. So I think that's the correct role for him, the one Nedved had.
And talking about the ownership, you got the Agnelli family, 100 years of ownership of the club. You got John Elkann, the cousin of CEO of Exor, and he's not in management in Juventus, but he's the head of the club. Do you think we going to get more stakes from the Agnelli family in the club, or do you think we can say like a minority share of the club to like American or Middle East ownership?
I don't think we will sell Juventus. I think selling the team to a foreign country, it makes it a business, but you can see for Exor Juventus, it's not a great business, because we're always losing money, but it's a brand, it's honor, about everything. It's above everything, it's honor. And it's a brand that they want to keep. They want to be the best team in Italy. They want to globalize it and be one of the best brands in the world. I believe we already are, with the work that Agnelli did, globalizing the team and also seeing it as a business, but not just solely as a business. Because if it was solely just a business, we would have sold it to some Arabian oil billionaire.
Yeah.
And then I think that the club would lose the soul. So I wouldn't like that. So I believe we're gonna stay put with Italian ownership, but with the sponsors, we might look at America, like FedEx, Amazon, something like that, because we've been doing a lot of marketing in the US for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, because we were talking about it's like more of a romantic side. We have Jeep for like 5 years now, and I see on X you got Ferrari as it has a sponsor to the shirt. But do you think it's more like American or from the Middle East?
I think that plan B would be like Ferrari, because that would be the same as Jeep, because Exor Group own Jeep, and they also own for a huge part of Ferrari as well. So I think that's a plan B. But if you can get more money from the Americans, then I think it would be the first priority. And I think not necessarily the Middle East, but maybe East Asia, like China, Japan, Korea, some kind of brand from there. And then I think the Middle East is a less priority, like Emirates or something. But they already have huge deals with other clubs. So they are Real Madrid sponsor at at the moment, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
did they change?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, and also Manchester City and teams like that. So I don't think that they're gonna go with Juventus just right now. But yeah, the Americans first, because they don't have these huge sponsorships in Europe at the moment. So it could be a new way for them.
Yeah.
And then Plan B, Ferrari. It could be.
What do you think about the future of when you see like the Club World Cup next summer? We are, I think, going to Champions League next season. We got the capital gain from that, but it's next year, and all the games is like up to 70 games for a year. It's a big difference from now when we just play in Serie A and Coppa Italia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we going to get more players from the next gen team, or do you think we're gonna buy more players to have a broader squad?
I think definitely we're going to rely on next year.
Yeah.
Because that's the most economical model. And I do think that we have players who are capable of playing for Juventus. Not necessarily first team world-class players at the moment, but I believe we have some gems in the club. Like Fagioli, I believe he can be like Marchisio at some kind of point. Unfortunately, he did some stupid things with gambling, so... But Juventus just extended his contract in December, I think. So they believe in him, and I do know that a lot of people in Denmark also like him and believe in him. So he's definitely one of them. I think if there is economy to buy one major signing, we're going to do it in the midfield, and maybe in the defense as well. But then we're just going to rely on the next gen players, because we have Soler at the moment, who's brilliant. We have Dean Huijsen, the defense was brilliant. I don't know about Barrenechea. I don't think he will be. I don't think that Kyle Shorts would be as well. But they can give the club possibility to rotate. So against the smaller teams, you can have some of those players to play these kind of games.
Yeah, and we have Nicolo Rovella, we have Luca Pellegrini, but I think Lazio is going to buy both of them. But then you have Artur Melo from Fiorentina, who is going to get back, I think. But do you think we're going to sell him?
I think that they're going to calculate on what can we bring into the team in the summer, because if we get a new coach, he will get a second chance.
Yeah.
And during the preseason, he will be assessed. And if the coach, he likes him, because Artur Melo, he can be good. But the main question is, did we use him correctly when we had him in Europe? Because he was actually quite good in Barcelona at some times. And I think everyone knows that the swap between Artur Melo and Pjanic, it was more economy and not the players. So I think that there is a possibility for him to shine, because if McKennie can shine like this, I must admit, he's one of the best midfielders in Serie A at the moment. He is. It's not arguable, because when you have these many assists. But I think if we can use him in the right manner, then he can be valuable for the team. But if we have money to buy some other player, then that'd be a possibility as well. I still think we have one guy who is lurking behind the scenes, who has been reported to Juventus so many times. But when he finally had the chance, he moved to Saudi Arabia.
Oh, yeah.
I think you know who I mean, Sergei Milinkovic-Savic.
Yeah.
And the rumors are that he's not completely satisfied. So I think some of the players from Saudi Arabia, they are available, and they want to play a little bit more professional football when they still have the age. I believe he's only 30, so he has 2 or 3 seasons left on high level, then he can always move back if he wants. But I think if we have a possibility to buy him very, very cheap, then he's going to be one of them the team's going to look at because he would be perfect for Juventus.
Yeah. And in your opinion, if we're talking about from the front to the back, we have a lot of offensive players, but in the midfield, it's like Cop Miners and such players. And in the back, you have like Riccardo Calafiori in Bologna. What's your players do you want to get in the summer?
Now you just mentioned Calafiori, that he could actually be a possibility if Thiago Motta comes.
Yeah.
I think he is a huge possibility if he comes. Of course, you have all these dream signings, but the problem is we have to live in reality. We don't know how the economic situation is going to be. So first of all, at the moment, we need to focus on securing Champions League football.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to Atalanta this round, but if they won, they would only be 6 points away from us, and they are playing very well at the moment. So I think we should do everything in our power to secure Champions League so we can get the 80 million plus minus. And then we will be, of course, getting around 50 million for playing the World Club Cup. And then we have some gaps that we need to close. We have the capital gain. So it's very hard to say how much money there's going to be because we need to sell. I believe that we can sell some of the French players that we are not using that much, and we can get 10, 15, 20. And if we can sell to 3 of these players, then you have quite a good amount to buy one top player. Not from the highest shelf, but maybe an upcoming star, because we cannot compete with the Premier League teams. They pay like 100 million. You can see how Chelsea are spending their money and not winning anything, so it's hard to challenge.
Yeah, and I think we can sell like Keane and Kostic, maybe Milik, and players that we don't use, and like Arthur Melo if it's not fit to the new coach. We got payment for Luca Pellegrini, we got from Ravella, and I think Barnechea is talking about like Genoa and do the same deal as we did with Conny de Winter. So we got a little bit of money from such players, and then we can put some players from the next gen team and get a broader squad, and we can take back Huijsen, as you mentioned, from the loan in Roma. But what do you think about the defense? We got Bremer. It's much talking about Manchester United. We got Gatti, who as mentioned, like a diamond in the rough. I don't know if he's going to be a diamond or not. Then we got Rugani. We don't have the Danilo, and Alexander is going to leave with a big salary. But if we're talking about the defense, do you think we're going to keep Bremer, or do you think we're going to sell him to get the capital in?
It's a good question, because it depends on what's going to happen this summer. Because when you look at Bremer, there's no doubt the best defender in Syria.
Yeah.
No doubt. But there's a but, because many people, they say he only fit in a 3-back line. So we have to assess and see, are we going to play a 3-back line or a 4-back line? And then if it's a 4-3-3 with a 4-back line, then he has to be assessed this summer to see, okay, does he fit? If he fits, then I think we should keep him, because he's by far the best defender. If he cannot play like that, and we have to think about the team, then I would buy a player like Calafiori and add him to the squad, play 4-3-3, and get the money, because at some point all players, they are replaceable in some kind of manner, and everyone is for sale. It's the price who dictates how much it is. If we can get more than 70 for him, and we are in doubt if he will fit the new system, then I think we should sell him. Of course, personally, I really like him, so it would be sad, but for the benefit of the team, that would be the right decision if we move on to a 4-3-3 and he's not suitable for that.
It's almost the same when we, like you talked earlier about Zinedine Zidane. We sold into Real Madrid and we got like 3 very good players for that amount of money. So we can do the same with Bremer if he's not going to fit the defense formation. Yeah, exactly. I say this, Andrew, lots of thanks because you want to talk about Juventus in this podcast, and I am going to contact the other ones that you mentioned in the Juventus Denmark podcast. Gives a lot of fun talking to you, and like I told Martin, your colleague from the podcast, I have to work on my English because you're talking real good English, and Martin too.
It was really good.
Yeah,
no problem.
It's the second language in Swedish, in Sweden, but I have to train. But I do this more and more the international episodes, so it's going to get better and better. I hope.
It was very good. I thought you did it perfectly. So, and thank you for having me. I always love to talk about Juventus. And mostly I do it domestically, but I love when I get invitations from other countries who are just as passionate about the club and the game like we are.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope I can source. Now the English is good. Put some of my listeners to the Juventus Denmark podcast too. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we will be making some announcement about this for the Juventus Forum as well. So they do understand English in Denmark as well. So they might be interested in listening to this.
Yeah, sounds great. And a lot of thanks for your departure. I can't talk now.
No worries.
Yeah, and I put this up later today.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.